Tell me exactly where you come from.
Oh yes, I can, Rachel. Can I borrow that? If you see that lake there, I'm about 70 miles, north of that lake. Actually, northeast of that lake, just about there where that spot is. It's called Eldoret. That is where I was. That's where I grew up, and I have lived for many years.
What language is spoken in Kenya?
A lot of languages. There are more than 200 tribes in Kenya, all speaking different languages: Kikuyus, Luyas, Luos, Kalenjin, and so on. But the main language that is spoken right through, apart from English, is also Kiswahili. That's the one that is used.
So can you teach me how to say hello, my name is Rachel in that language?
Right, I'll teach you not only to say hello, but I want you to look at that camera and say hello, welcome, and my name is Rachel. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Jambo.
Jambo.
Karibu.
Karibu.
Jina langu
Jigalangu.
ni Rachel.
Ni Rachel.
There you are. You're spoken Kiswahili. Great. Right.
Moving on to housing.
All right.
Are the houses like our house in England?
Some of them are. If you visit all the towns, the houses will be like this. Most of them will be one floor rather than two floor.
Yeah.
But if you leave the towns and so on, you will come to houses that are just made of mud with grass on top. And most people will use that because that is all they can afford. Some people can't afford to buy tin and so on to put on the roof. Therefore, they won't do that.
What are they made of?
Most of them will be made of wood.
Yeah.
All right, and mud, wood covered with mud, and then on the top they will have grass that is put on top, and actually it means that they are nice and cool in the day, and at night they don't lose a lot of heat because the grass covers it. Actually, it's a very, very good insulating material. In the day it's nice and cool, and at night once you've lit the fire, it is nice and warm.
Are the houses dark?
Yes, I think most of them will not, especially the ones that are made of mud and wood. They are quite dark because it's not always easy to put windows in. And electricity, actually you don't have a lot of electricity. Not in the villages, you won't have a lot of electricity. In the towns, you will. But most people will use lanterns for seeing round. But sometimes you can walk into a house, you wouldn't have a window that big into any house at all. It would be a lot smaller.
Do they have bathrooms?
Yeah, the town ones will have showers rather than bathrooms because most part of Kenya is warm enough. Therefore, people don't have baths; they will have showers. But for those that are made of mud and so on, you won't have any running water. But rather, people will probably go to the river to have a wash. Some people will do that. Have you ever done that?
No.
Well, there you are. You see, some people do that.
That's it for houses. Can you tell me about food in Kenya?
Oh yes, I can tell you a lot. Kenya grows a lot of tropical fruit. In fact, some of the fruit is exported into this country. Del Monte have got a very large factory, and in fact a lot of pineapple farms in just outside Nairobi. They grow a lot of pineapples and so on, and most of them, in fact, if you go to Morrison's or Sainsbury's, you will find that there are pineapples that are named produce of Kenya. So Kenya grows pineapples. It also grows a lot of avocados, bananas, and also Mount 2, I think, as well as green beans. So, a lot of food is grown in Kenya. The main staple food of most Kenyans, I mean the food that is used most, is actually maize meal. That's what most people use.
What are the main foods that people eat in Kenya?
Yes, it is. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I answered that before you asked. It is maize meal, but actually most people will call it ugali because it is ground and then made into a kind of real thick porridge, and it is eaten with vegetables and meat and so on. It's really nice. One day I might make you some.
Yeah. What sort of meat would people eat?
Meat? Ooh, now there will be beef, chicken, goat. Very important. Most Kenyans would rather eat goat rather than beef. Unlike in this country where beef is more expensive than anything else, when you get to Kenya, beef is cheaper than goat. It's even cheaper than chicken. Chicken is quite expensive because most people would rather eat chicken or goat rather than beef. Therefore, beef is very, very cheap. Mm-hmm.
And what does goat taste like?
Oh, have you ever eaten venison?
No.
No. Do you know what venison is?
No.
Oh, well, I'll tell you. It's wild deer. All right, deer and so on. It actually tastes like that. It is not like lamb at all. It's very, very different. Very strong taste. And you can always tell. And it is not as fat as, as lamb and so on. It's very, very different. But it's beautiful if you like it. Otherwise, it can have a taste that some people will say, no, I wouldn't want to eat it. Even in this country, I go looking for goat if I can. And you can get it in this country too.
Yeah. I know that food is bought in markets. Are the markets like our markets in England?
You mean supermarkets? Oh, yeah. In Nairobi, Eldoret, Nakuru, and so on, they will all have big supermarkets. In fact, in January, when I went to Kenya, I visited one supermarket in Mombasa, and I could have been anywhere in the world. It had everything you could think of. But for most people, there are no supermarkets. There are corner shops where people will buy, the things that they can't buy in an open market. There will be open markets where there will be vegetables and chicken and fruit and so on. Those will be sold, in the open space. You don't have a supermarket that will have all that. And most people who live in the countryside will not go to a supermarket to buy anything. They will go to a corner shop to buy their, normally tinned things that they can't buy. They would be able to keep for a long time. But the rest is actually bought in local markets, open markets.
Do the children in Kenya have sweets and chocolate?
Yeah, there is sweets, there are chocolates and so on. But most Kenyans, you will find that have got very, very good teeth because they don't have a lot of sweets. I'll tell you, when I was growing up, we probably got sweets at Christmas. That was all. Any other time, you only got a sweet if somebody was visiting your home. Therefore, that means that most children will not eat sweets except in places where they grow sugarcane, where children will eat a lot of sugarcane and their teeth rot. But on the whole, the rest of the country, you will find that most kids will have very, very good teeth because they don't have, they don't have sweets. Chocolate is very, very expensive. I think very few people would eat chocolate. Very few children would eat chocolate. I don't think I ate chocolate until I must have been an adult when I first had some chocolate. if you want, I can tell you how to do it. First of all, you go and buy some goat. You have to go to a halal bookshop, a halal butcher, because most butchers in this country will not sell you goat because they just don't like it. I asked one person whether they could sell goat. You know what they said? I don't like to sell goat because I wouldn't like to tell somebody I've got a kid for sale. Because, you know, goats produce kids. Therefore, they would want to say, no, you can't do that. Therefore, most of them will not sell goat. But if you go to a Muslim butcher, they will probably have goat. Therefore, I would buy a kilo of goat, which is about 2 pounds. Come and dice it up, all right? Take 1 onion, chop it up, and some tomatoes, chop them up, and then fry the onions and the tomatoes, all right? Add, add spices. You may want to add, you may want to add mixed spices and so on if you want it sweet. And then after it's cooked for a while, add the meat and just let it cook without putting any water in it. Let it cook for about 40, 50 minutes on low heat. Just add a little salt and it will be beautiful. And then take maize meal, boil water. Now this is the difficult bit because you have to be careful. If you boil a lot of water, you will make a lot of ugali. So you only boil a little water in a pan, and when it is still boiling, you add the maize meal and you stir it until it is as solid as when you make, when you're making cake, the way you mix it up until it is like that, that's the way you do it. But it's a lot harder than that. And then you let it cook for about 3 or 4 minutes. It will be ready, and then just serve it. And you eat it with your hands. There's no use using spoon and fork because you have to fold it and then dip it in the in the meat and then eat it. Beautiful. Oh, I can feel that.
That's it all about food. But now can you tell me about schools?
Oh, schools. Now, there are primary schools, secondary schools, and there are also what they call nursery schools, where, very, very little children go to. In Kenya, children do not go to primary school until they are 7 years old. That means that between 4 and 7, they will go to a nursery school. And in nursery, they will be taught how to read and to write and so on, if they can afford to pay the fees, because there are families that can't. And therefore, there are people in Kenya who haven't been either to nursery or primary or even secondary. And that means that, because they won't get all the best jobs, will they? In Kenya, unlike in this country, you have to pay for all your schooling until recently, when the government passed a law that meant that children could go to school without paying fees. There are other extra things that they have to pay for, and it's one of those things. Do you want to ask anything else about schooling?
Do all children go to school in Kenya?
Well, not all of them do, unfortunately. For example, there are parents who can't afford to buy uniform, who may be, who may live a long way away from the school, and therefore they can't send their children to school. In this country, a school will not be any more than 2 miles from any nearest village. In Kenya, 3-4 miles is normal. And this is why Kenya produces a lot of good runners, middle distance runners, because the schools are about 4-5 miles apart. And 5 miles is about 8,000 kilometers, 8,000 meters, which means that running 10,000 meters is just like a cup of tea. 3 miles is 5,000 meters. This is why, when it comes to running 5,000 meters, Kenyans will, they will really do it well. But it also means that there are children who can't go to school because if you don't have running water, someone has to fetch it. If mom and dad are very, very busy doing something else, all they can do is to make sure that the children also have their duties to do, like fetching water, looking after their animals and so on. They'll have to do all that.
What do they do to get in school?
Sorry, yes.
What are the schools like?
The schools, most of them will have very, very good teachers. Some schools will be in buildings like this, beautiful, decorated, that is in towns. But in the villages and so on, most schools will just have a tinned roof and walls that are made of mud without necessarily any windows in, apart from just holes. Because most children will come to school and they will go home in the evening. There is nothing left in the school at all. Yeah. So that's what they do.
How many children would there be in a class?
Most often it will be about 30, 35. It's quite a lot of kids when you think about it. How many are you in your school, in your class?
31.
31. Hey, that's quite a lot. Yes, 30, 35. That's a general rule. But with Kenya allowing for free education, I am sure by now there will be a lot more in class than just 30, 35. But I remember when I was growing up, there were about 30 in my class, 35 in my class, 30, 35.
Do they have school dinners?
No, they don't. Except in the towns, sometimes they will, they will be offered school dinners, but that means that they have to pay for it. And if you can't afford school dinner, well, you go without. When I was growing up, well, if you live 5 miles away from school, unless you took your own dinner with you, you didn't have anything to eat. Most children would take their own dinners with them. Therefore, those who could afford it, and those who couldn't, just went for a whole day without. It didn't kill them.
Can you tell me about toys?
Yes. Most Kenyans actually make their own. Most Kenyan children will make their own toys from what they have. If they collect a piece of wire, they will make their own. They will model their own little car. If they have a lot of wire, they will even put wheels round it. If they have even more wire, they will put other things in it. Some of them can be really beautiful, but you have to make your own toys. Yeah, very rarely will you get children buying toys, except of course in towns where people can be as rich as in this country. There are people who are.
Can you tell me about what toys children have in Kenya?
Sorry, you just asked that. Sorry, you may want.
The girls play with top dollies.
Well, they do, some of them, but you have to make your own. Unless, of course, your mommy or daddy are rich enough to go and buy some. Then in which case you can have your own toys. And it's the same with, shall I go on to, boys? You know what boys play? Boys will play with football. If they are rich enough, they can buy a football. All right? If they are not, then what happens is that they make their own. Do you know how they make it? They just collect a lot of plastic bags and so on, put it all together, jam them as close as possible, tie it with a rope as much as possible, and that becomes the ball that they will play with. And that is it. Others will actually, put as many bags as possible, tie it as close as possible, and then burn the outside so that the plastic congeals and holds it in. And then they can use it as football. So there you are.
Do most families have televisions?
Not most, but until recently, television was not something that people would have said that they valued. But when I was in Kenya, it was actually interesting to see, a lot of television aerials in people's homes. Even people who lived in mud huts wanted to have a television, but of course they would have to have a battery operated one because they haven't got electricity. But where there is electricity, I think people will want to have televisions. Televisions are very, very expensive in Kenya. You wouldn't get one for less than £250, and that may be a black and white one as well. That's a lot of money.
Can you tell me about the main religions in Kenya?
There are two main religions in Kenya, Islam and Christianity. Christianity, I think, is about 85% of the population would say they are Christians. 15% would say they are Muslim. 15% would say some are Muslims, others are animists, or people who do not believe in Christianity or Islam as such.
Other churches like ours in Starbeck?
Well, yes, there are churches that are variety of churches. You will have churches that are Pentecostal, others are Roman Catholic. You've got Anglican churches. You've got some independent churches. Some are really, really lively. Yeah. Others can be quite dead. I mean, in terms of tradition and so on. But on the whole, Kenyans like a lively service. I haven't been to any service that was really, really dull. Because, well, most Kenyans would say it needs to be lively if it is going to be, if it is worth, worshipping. Got to do it really well.
Thank you very much